My name is Lee Chapman. I am 55 years old and I am functionally deaf. The very first time I had a hearing test done that showed hearing loss, I was probably in my early 20s, and it showed just some mild hearing loss in my right ear. It wasn't until probably in my mid to late 40s that I started noticing that I was having a harder time hearing what people were saying, and it was just constantly having to ask people to repeat themselves. 5 years ago was when I had my first hearing test that showed moderate to a little bit more than moderate hearing loss going on.
What is the difference between being deaf and being functionally deaf?
People who are just deaf, there's typically a physical problem with their ears and how it transmits the sound. It can go from just mild hearing loss all the way up to completely, there's no transmission of sounds with their ears. Being functionally deaf, there's a processing, whether it be being able to process over background noises or just your brain not being able to make sense of the sounds that are coming in. There can be hearing loss along with that, but it's not just your basic hearing loss.
What is the biggest challenge you have faced because of your diagnosis?
Just the difficulty in communication, especially if I'm somewhere where there's a large group of people or there's noise going on. You go to a restaurant with family and it's really hard to interact with them because you can't hear over the noise. It kind of becomes isolating because of that lack of interaction, and it really just kind of makes you not even want to try because you know you're not going to be able to interact and you're just going to kind of be sitting there not really having an idea what's going on in the communication process. The other thing I find is people not understanding the problem. That's really a difficult thing because they hear me talking and I don't really sound like someone who has hearing loss and doesn't understand how to speak. In times I can hear well. If I'm just sitting and having a conversation one-on-one with somebody in a quiet space, I can communicate pretty well. So they see that and they're like, well, you can hear just fine. But in reality, I can't. And so it's really frustrating and just kind of makes it hard to do things like that.
Is there any technique or method or skill that you have learned to help you cope with your hearing loss?
Couple things that I've really have kind of learned to do. First, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, but lip reading. I figured out probably about 2 or 3 years ago how much I was lip reading. And it's not a perfect system, and you're not going to get total hearing by doing that. You're not going to really totally know what somebody's saying, but it can really help reinforce what you are hearing. And then just really understanding knowing that if I can see somebody's face, it helps. So just being able to say, hey, I need you to look at me. Stuff like that has really helped. And knowing that if I need to have a serious conversation with somebody, it needs to be done in a quiet spot. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. I also have learned sign language. With learning the sign language, I've started working with deaf children. I've been substituting in the deaf education classrooms through the school district, which has also led me to go back to school to get my degree to teach deaf kids, which has been an extraordinary experience for me. So it's just opened up a whole potential career field for me, and that I never would have thought about doing before. So in that sense, it's been a real blessing.